Hey everyone, it's Chris Smetana with IE Med and welcome to Test Prep Thursday. So last Tuesday of this week, we posted a question on our Facebook page. When administering high flow oxygen to combat hypoxia, you are increasing blank, which relates to blank gas law. And I'll run through the options that we had for answers. And then I'm going to kind of break down the individual gas laws. So hopefully they provide a little bit better understanding because you actually do have several gas laws that occur during respiration and oxygenation. So we want to clarify those. And we'll kind of go through each one of them and what those are. And then we'll kind of go back into why the right answer is the right answer. So A was the first choice, and that's solubility in Henry. So you are increasing solubility, which relates to Henry's law. It's not solubility. It's not the ability of that molecule to diffuse and solute across the alveolar membrane into the bloodstream. B, partial pressure in Graham's law. Now, partial pressure is great. It would be the correct answer for the first pad, but the gas law, Graham's law, does not it does not actually relate to that. Graham's law is diffusion, and it more goes into the size of the molecule, which I'll talk about. And we have option C, partial pressure and Henry's law. Ding, ding, ding. That would be the correct one here. So for those of you that answered C on that question, you obviously got it right. D, molecular size and Dalton's law. So molecular size, well, it wouldn't increase the O2 molecule size by administering a high flow. So you add more concentration, it doesn't change the molecule size of that oxygen molecule. And not necessarily Dalton's law comes into here either. So Dalton's law does deal with partial pressure. But let's kind of talk about what diffusion and respiratory is, right? So when we talk about diffusion, you're talking about diffusion of a gas as a process, when you talk about the definition, it's a process by which a net transfer, so the transfer of molecules takes place from a zone which the gas exerts a high partial pressure in which it exerts to a lower partial pressure. So gas always travels from high concentration to low concentration. So let me kind of break down just real quickly with the respiratory system, what you might see. So we have three gas laws I'm going to kind of hit right here. And the first one is going to be kind of Fick's law. So when we talk about Fick's law of diffusion, Fick's law is really looking at, the net diffusion rate across a fluid membrane. And it's saying it's proportional to the difference in partial pressure. Meaning, this is why high flow nasal cannula works so well in passive oxygenation or apneic oxygenation. When we put that nasal cannula in and we ramp up the concentration, the amount of oxygen molecules, it's going to make it higher in my oropharyngeal airway down here. It's going to make it higher here than it is in my lungs, right? Because I have nothing but like CO2, especially if I'm hypoxic. The concentration in my lungs is going to be significantly lower. It's going to be really, really high up here because I'm just flushing a whole bunch of O2 and trying to get that nitrogen washout. But also, because the concentration is higher up here because of my nasal cannula ramming it down here, it's naturally going to want to diffuse from higher concentration to lower concentration in my lungs. And that is why apneic oxygenation works without respiratory. You don't need to have any actual physical or mechanical respiratory drive to go on or occurring in order for that gas molecule, the oxygen molecule, to diffuse or migrate through the pressure gradients from up here to down here. Okay, so Fick's law happens from pretty much external with O2 down until we get into the lungs, right? And once it gets into the lungs, okay, well, now we start talking about Graham's law. So in Graham's law is when gases are dissolved in a liquid. The relative rate of the diffusion of a given gas, so how it diffuses in that liquid, is proportional to its solubility, like I talked about earlier, its ability to become part of that molecule and diffuse across. In a liquid, it's inversely proportional to the square root of the molecular mass. And so when we look at some of these things, it's like, okay, well, we know that carbon dioxide, the rate of diffusion for carbon dioxide in plasma in the human body, well, it's higher. Well, carbon dioxide is 22 times the solubility, so it diffuses pretty well. But the problem with carbon dioxide, even though it's 22 more times its solubility is 22 times greater than that of oxygen, the problem with carbon dioxide is it's such a large molecule, it's very heavy. It's massive. It's 44 compared to 32 for oxygen. So when we look at Graham's law, it's really just a diffusion of that gas across surfactant and into the alveoli, through and into the bloodstream so it can load up on the hemoglobin. So when we're looking for the transport in Graham's law of that O2 molecule moving across, that's what we're talking about. Graham's law is, hey, I'm looking at these molecules and how they actually transport through the liquid medium. Now that could be surfactant in a normal patient, right? But if we start throwing, say ARDS, right, or pneumonia, well, we change that fluid medium. It becomes thicker, right? And because it becomes thicker, it takes longer for that O2 molecule to diffuse across. More importantly, it takes even longer for the CO2 to come back out. This is why when we talk about in ventilation strategies, either having a prolonged I time, inverse IE ratio, or we go to a prolonged E time or expiratory time to allow that CO2, because we have that gunk in there, right? That pneumonia, whatever that's in the way, between the bloodstream and the PBR and getting it out through the alveoli so we can exhale it. Whatever's in the way there, well, that's what we're talking about here. So, and then we actually go into Henry's law, which is when a gas is in contact with the surface of a liquid, so think about the bloodstream, okay, and we put pressure, partial pressure, so that's what we're doing here, we're putting pressure behind it. Well, think about, Henry's Heineken, right? It's, as we bottle, we want to get all the O2 out of my beer, right? Because I don't want that O2 to make my beer go flat. So they put CO2 under pressure and force that CO2 into the liquid to force all the O2 out, and then they put a cap. And then when we go purchase it from the store and we take it home, or we're sitting there on our back porch on a nice sunny day and we crack that beer, we get that shh. Well, what that is that partial pressure has been removed. We've removed that pressure, and now that pressure wants to equalize to the atmospheric pressure, because it's the CO2 pressure is higher in that Heineken bottle than it is in the outside environment. So when we crack that and you see all those bubbles come up and out, well, that's Henry's law. It's because we took the pressure out. And it also means because the pressure or the partial pressure and gradient is higher or higher inside the bottle than outside the bottle in the outside environment, it naturally wants to diffuse and come out. So it equalizes. So that's why we kind of get the bubbles. Here in oxygenation, we say, hey, we're going to do this. And we're going to help predict, the amount of each gas that's going to go into that solution. So we're going to put pressure behind it in the lungs, right? And it's going to push it across the membrane, and it's going to get into the bloodstream. It's going to want to load up because now we're under pressure, okay? And that's going to have it load up. For example, the gas exchange process in respiratory respiration, sorry, I can't speak this morning on a Thursday, is carbon dioxide again. We're looking at that in the plasma, because remember, as that oxygen molecule diffuses across the membrane, the alveolar membrane, and gets into the bloodstream of the lungs, in the peripheral vascular system, what it's going to do is it's going to actually diffuse off into plasma, right? Plasma is that liquid medium. And then from there, it'll load up onto the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is going to be my school bus, man. We're going to open the doors. Hey, I need 4 people to get on. We're going to take up our 4 and we're going to head on down the road, right? But you still have all these oxygen molecules that are floating around in our plasma. They're just not transported as effectively. And this is why we need hemoglobin, right? Even with the low hemoglobin count, okay, we can still have oxygenation occur because the oxygen is still in the plasma, and it does have the ability to diffuse out to whatever that lower pressure gradient is. And if it's still lower due to hypoxia, it's going to want to diffuse. So those are kind of the different gas laws. But why is this important? So when we look at the respiratory and the diffusion of respiratory gases, through the respiratory system, okay, we have physical laws, which just describe the definition of what we just described, like Fick's law, Graham's law, and Henry's law. It also looks at, what is the capillary transport time of that red blood cell? How long does it take for it to come back around? And what is the rate of protein binding? Obviously, we have to have a good rate of protein binding. We call this the oxygen-hemoglobin association or dissociation curve, if you guys remember from the exam, and from those, some of you have taken some advanced paramedic courses. Factors that actually influence the diffusion of gases of lung and respiration. Well, we look at the coefficient of the gas, right? The molecule size. Like I said, CO2 is 22 times bigger than the O2 molecule. So it's bigger, it's more solubility. So it's more soluble, it's more able to mix in, but it's such a big molecule to get across that membrane. whether it be surfactant or gunk, mucus, it could be plasma if I have COPD and I'm backing up my lungs, right? So whatever that fluid viscosity is, right? Temperature, okay, temperature does play in a factor here. We start thinking about cold versus warm, and the density of the gas. So those are all factors that would kind of come into the diffusion for gases across membranes. When we talk about partial pressure gradients, partial pressure gradients, we look at them between the capillary and the alveoli, right? We look at, what is the alveolar gas mixture, right? How much am I mixing that I need to have? Because, obviously it's going to want to go from high to low, right? Do I have mixed venous blood gas content mixed into that? That's going to play into that. What is my solubility of the gas, which influences its relationship of partial pressure concentration? It's more soluble, you can throw more pressure behind it and get it to go deeper, right? What's the blood gas barrier? So we talked about ARDS, pneumonia, disease, pulmonary fibrosis even, so think about, what is in the way of that oxygen molecule or carbon dioxide molecule to get out or in, right? What's in the way? Surfactant is great, it's extremely soluble. Very thin, very viscous, things go in and out very easily. Once I start filling that up with more, like say plasma from backing up, ARDS, sepsis, you start getting pneumonia, you get really thick, gunky, alveolar sacs, full of mucus. Well, it's harder to get that molecule to go through that stuff, and it takes longer. So it's going to take longer for the O2 to move across that barrier, load up in the plasma, load up in the hemoglobin, and then go to the end organ, cells that are needing that O2. We also look at what is my surface area for pulmonary gas exchange? So what is this surface area? Because as we increase PEEP, we increase partial pressure, but really what we're trying to do is we're increasing our alveolar membrane surface area. We're making more of that alveoli available for diffusion of gases, for O2 to go in, CO2 to get out. And we want to have the maximum available. So that's why we give PEEP and more PEEP and more PEEP until we actually hit a diminishing return. This is all, influenced by age and disease. So you think about how old I am, non-compliant as I get older. Also, when we talk about disease like COPD, right? Emphysema, some of those smoker type injuries that we talk about. Capillary surface, when you think about how do I maximize it? It's how do I recruit, pulmonary recruitment, pulmonary blood flow, volume, right? We start thinking about what is my VQ, ventilation for V, Q for perfusion. Do I have matching occur? Do I have enough oxygen molecules to meet the perfusion demand, hemoglobin, the school bus is on the other side? If I do, I got BQ matching, that's great. When I start losing one, so I don't have enough O2 molecules because I'm hypoxic, I got really thick alveolar walls from, having pneumonia for a week, I'm super, stuffed up. Well, that oxygen molecule can't get across as fast. So I actually have a mismatch on my ventilation side. There's not enough O2 molecules that can get across. I have plenty of perfusion. My heart's pumping well. I got plenty of O2 and red blood cells, hemoglobin molecules that are running around. I can pick them up and take, load up my school bus, but I don't have enough passengers, right? So I don't have matching. I have what is called a VQ mismatch. So those are other terminologies to think about. And then we also look at what is my capillary transport time? How long does the transport time take from blood in the alveolar capillaries? Normally it's about 3/4 to 1 second, okay, to get this out. In healthy adults, the minimum capacity of this for capillary transport time is actually about half a second, right about approximately half a second. Disease is going to affect this, right? Once again, sepsis, ARDS, pneumonia, those are all going to come into play. Asthma, protein gas binding, okay? The binding of the hemoglobin and oxygen has a finite reaction rate. It's very small, okay? The reaction rate is much faster than the diffusion rate. It just locks up really quickly. So once it gets across and gets into the plasma, it's really quick to load up on the hemoglobin. Okay, that's protein binding, but you gotta have protein, right? Albumin, stuff like that. And those big guys to help bring things together. When we look at diffusion alone is insufficient to account for the rate of pulmonary capillaries. And then we just look at other gases, and when you start getting anesthesia and OR kind of type medicine. So, and that's kind of what we're looking at, and why. So why would Henry's law and partial pressure be the correct answer for our initial question, right? And so let me read that question one more time. Okay, when administering high flow oxygen to combat hypoxia, you are increasing blank, which relates to blank gas law. The answer is C, partial pressure in Henry. So what administering high pool oxygen to combat hypoxia, okay, I am increasing my partial pressure. I am providing more concentration of that. And then I'm taking Henry's law. And why Henry's law takes into this. So we have to increase in hypoxia. Think about, when we have a hypoxic patient, hypoxia, there's only two things really that are going to help increase this, right? I got to decrease my VQ shunt or mismatch, right? So I got a problem on my B side, my ventilation side. For whatever reason, I'm not getting enough passengers to load up on my school bus over here. So I need to increase the amount of passengers up front, right? So think about like a bus stop. Well, the more people I put at that bus stop and make available, hopefully there will be more opportunities for those people to then get on the bus when it comes by, right? But I got to get them there. So how do I do that? It increased the number of passengers, right? So I increase the concentration of O2. This is better known as increasing my FiO2, and I usually take that to 100%. Okay, so on a ventilator, you take it to 100%. I'm giving them all the O2 in the world that I can possibly deliver off my ventilator. And when I look at that, this is going to drive my PaO2 up, my pulmonary oxygen, or PO2 as well. So PO2, PaO2 once it gets into the plasma, okay, it's going to drive it up because I'm putting more passengers at that bus stop. All right, cool. I got all these bus stops. And as I'm doing that, I'm also causing nitrogen washout, right? Like as I increase the concentration of O2, hopefully that'll increase and it'll push out the nitrogen that I don't want around. So I can increase my apneic oxygenation period if I decide to RSI. This is why we talk about nitrogen washout. It's, hey, I can load the body up, the lungs up with more O2 to be available so it can naturally diffuse. It kind of goes back in the Fick's law, right? When the other thing you're going to do is you're going to increase your surface area, right? We're going to make that alveolar as big, as big as we possibly can. We want to get it as big as we possibly can so we can maximize surface area, meaning if there's more places, right? So take our bus stop analogy, for example. We'll take a bus. I got all these passengers now, right? I increase my concentration of oxygen. I put all these passengers at this bus stop. The bus comes by. Well, if I have a bus with just one door up front, I can only take on so many at a time. But say I now have 2 doors or 3 doors. Well, I can start allowing more passengers to get on quicker, right? And this is what we're doing when we increase the surface area. All we're doing is allowing more oxygen molecules and CO2 molecules to diffuse across that membrane easier, right? So it allows for more oxygenation to occur, and that's what we want to do. Adding a PEEP valve to your BVM, adding PEEP to your ventilator. These are all ways that you guys can increase that surface area. And that's what I typically do when we talk about a recruitment maneuver, right? When I put a patient on a ventilator, one of the things I want to do is do a recruitment maneuver to see, am I maximizing all of the alveoli, all of that surface area tension? And if I am, well, just by giving a bump in my PEEP for a little bit, maybe I take it from 5 to 8, well, that's going to help pop up anything that has not residually opened up. And maybe I actually get improved PaO2. Maybe I get an improved SpO2 pleth waveform, not necessarily waveform, but the oxygenation, you'll see your SpO2 rise. So that hopefully will aid, in better diffusion. If I have more places for, passengers to get on and off, it just makes it easier. Then what we're going to do is we're going to supercharge this by adding some more pressure behind it. So I got this oxygen molecule, and now I'm going to increase PEEP. Right. This is Henry's law. This is exactly Henry's law. I'm going to put pressure behind this molecule and drive it into the plasma across the alveolar membrane. I want to drive that O2 across that plasma. And how am I going to do that? Put pressure behind it. PEEP. So we're going to put PEEP behind this, and it's going to push. So using our bus stop analogy, well, now you think I've increased the amount of passengers at the bus stop. I've made more doors on my bus so more people can get on and off. And then also what I'm going to do to get people on quicker is I'm going to put other people behind that to start pushing them, some sort of mechanism to push them all on the bus. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing with PEEP. We're trying to push the oxygen molecule across whatever is in the way. So, when we talk about Graham's law and diffusion and solubility, well, if it's an ammonia patient, they got all this gunk and they got all this mucus that's built around the alveolar sac. Well, I may have really good surface area, right? I've expanded that alveoli, but I still have this liquid medium in the way, a barrier, right? Which O2 is only going to, like, the solubility is not so great in that gunk. So what I have to do is now take that oxygen molecule and put pressure behind it and force that guy across so he can cross even quicker, right? So I'm decreasing, by putting pressure behind it, I'm decreasing the amount of time it takes for it to diffuse across that liquid medium. And then it gets into the plasma, and now it's under pressure from the lungs, right? Because I'm putting PEEP in the lungs, so there's high pressure here, which is forcing everything out. That's why we do it in COPD and CHF. More importantly, we don't want that fluid to back in. So if the pressure is bigger on this side versus this side, guess where all the fluid goes? Yeah, it stays in the body, stays in the intravascular space. That's where we want it. It doesn't hamper my ability to oxygenate. So just want to give you that quick little hit on Thursday. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a quick little breakdown on what these gas laws are. We reviewed Fick's, we reviewed Graham's, and we reviewed Henry's, all and how they relate to respiration. Thank you very much for listening and following along. If you have any feedback or comments, please leave them below. We're always trying to learn here, and we hope you go about your day safe. And if this is something that you struggle with, we do have 20% off our FMP course right now till the end of the month. So don't miss out on that. Just go check it over. The comments, the link will be in the comments below. Take advantage of it. We have just an a la carte. If you just want to do the ABG section, you can just do the ABG. This is something that everybody struggles on, but something that you will absolutely run into on any of those exams, whether it be FPC, CCP-C, CTRN, or CFRN. So hopefully this helps. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and enjoy your weekend.